Well, it's a special treat to get to be here at LLBN Live. I tape my own show. The world is crazy, and we've all been living in it. 2-3 months ago, none of us could have imagined we'd all be here. And we wear our masks until the red light goes on, and then we put them back on again when it's over. And all the crew here are wearing a mask. And the world has gone nuts in the last few weeks. And so I thought we'll just wrestle with some of the questions that are a part of all of this. What's going on? Where is God? We just have an instinctive sense is that if we're followers of God or followers of Jesus, there ought to be a little bubble of protection. Something should be different for us. We're Adventists, some of us here, and so we think, okay, we follow God as carefully as we know how. We go to church and we read the Bible and we pay tithes and offerings, and we should have some protection. What good is it to be a follower of God if there's no advantage in any way? Elie Wiesel won the Nobel Prize, died a little while ago, tells a famous story in his book called Night. The night that they had to run in the middle of the night, 14 years old, with barefoot in the snow to go to the German prison camp. After a few weeks, there was a day when 3 tried to escape from the prison. 2 men and 1 14-year-old boy. The commander wanted to make an example out of them, and so he was going to hang all 3 of them, lined up all the Jewish prisoners and forced them all to stand there while they hung their fellow Jews up on the line. The 2 men died quickly. They were heavy. But the boy was not heavy enough to draw the noose tight. So he hung up there choking and screaming, and they wouldn't let anybody stop. Finally, one of the Jews croaked out from the back row, "Where is God? This should not be happening. We are God's chosen people, and this should not happen. Where is God?" And we have those kinds of questions. And in Revelation, it says there are these souls under the altar. They're martyrs. And they're crying out to God, "How long, God, until we get out from under here? How long are we going to keep having to suffer and be martyrs for you?" These are good people. If anybody should get protection, it should be the martyrs. Good people. Didn't. My father was hit by a truck. He's a good man, the pastor. Didn't protect him. God has to have certain limits. He has to be careful. If he were to step in all the time, and viruses only hit bad people and not God people, Christian people, then everyone would join the church so they wouldn't get the bug. We would have the churches full overnight if God protected those people. So they would love God for not the greatest reasons. So now we come to Revelation and the 7 seals, Revelation 6 and 7. God has allowed a certain amount of evil, and he tells the 4 angels, hold back until we have everybody sealed. Revelation 7. Why does he choose to put the line here? Put the 4 angels here. There's evil over there, God is over here, and here's a line. Why does he choose to put the line right there? I do not know. Someday we'll be able to ask him exactly how he calculated that out. But if we're not careful, we begin to think that somehow then every bit of evil kind of goes through God. And so if anything bad happens, it's God choosing to allow that to happen. And I have probably heard that almost every day as a pastor most of my life. Someone gets sick, trying to learn why God is allowing this to happen. We have a disaster in the world and people try to interpret it. Why is God Katrina was because God was mad at Mardi Gras. Whatever it is, God is mad at something, so therefore God is up in heaven and He's calculating and measuring and analyzing and weighing, and He finally decides, okay, I'll let that happen. I let it go years ago. 1/3 of little girls in America have something happen to them that should not have happened. God in heaven decided that? God in heaven decided that these two people would be protected, but I'll let that one suffer? People die, they say God took them. It was their time. They're in a better place. I had visited with someone just last week. Husband died while I was on a trip, so I wasn't around to do the funeral or help them at all. So we got together. She said, all those things have been said to her. Her husband's in a better place. God was his time. I said, really? God sits up in heaven and He has a little morning ritual He has to do every day. I think we'll put that one on the list, and we'll put that one on the list. And He goes to the angels and said, okay, here's the list for today. And those angels go around the world taking people because it's their time. Really? That's the best that we can do. No, this idea of the 4 angels holding back evil is not specific. It's just a generic, general amount of evil that God has chosen to allow. And what actually happens because of stuff going on in our world today. So we have to be very, very careful. But now, here at the end of the world, God tells the angels, okay, we're going to have to move the line now and let it go. Because God said to Adam and Eve years ago, He said, if you eat of the tree, you will surely die. And they ate of the tree, so they should die. And God hasn't completely brought that into reality yet. People began to die. We will all die eventually. So it's tempting for people to think, maybe it's not true. Maybe you can sin and get away with it. And so at the end of the world here, the Bible says God is going to have to let go. Tell the angels to let go. And we have the 7 seals, and 1/4 of the world is destroyed. We have the 7 trumpets, and 1/3 of the world is destroyed. God is letting go in stages. And under the 7 plagues, then finally there's God, the angels aren't involved at all. They're God just letting evil be full tilt. And at the end, God is going to say, okay, you see, that's what the world would be like under Him. Is that the world you want? Or you can come with me. Make your choice. Years ago, I made a little parable out of this. And I hope this will make a little bit of sense, maybe because some of you have heard it and somewhere I've preached. But there was an old king. But he got old. He was loved by many of his people, but people began to feel like maybe his time had come. And his son began to campaign to take over. And finally, there was a coup, and they took the father out, took him over to another country, and put him over there. And now the son took over. But the father still had some resources. And when he began to watch television and see what was happening in his old country, he would sneak in some food, some medicine, put some money a few places. So people didn't really have the full impact of what it was like to live under the sun because the father was still supplementing and intervening in quiet ways, but no one really knew for sure where that was coming. And the son tried to take credit for it, although this is all from our country, from me. There came a time when it was bad enough, there was going to be an election. The old king decided he would run for election against his own son. So he began to come over and they would have rallies, but very few people came, just a few old people who remembered the old king. And his advisors had a little meeting with him and he said, you're going to have to pull back. They think that your son is giving them all this food and medicine and money. They don't know it's coming from you. You're going to have to pull back. Oh, I can't. People will suffer. Finally, the old king decided to go ahead. Tears streaming down his face, he gave the order, okay, pull back some. Not completely, but cut back some. Took back some of the medicine and all. After another week, they said, I don't think they quite got it yet. You're going to have to pull back further. I finally said, okay. They began to have shortages in the stores. You know what that's like. There began to be a shortage of gas and shortage of money. There began to be hospitals struggling with supplies. Finally, they said to the king, you're going to have to stop it all. The king finally did it. Okay. Now the country is going to pieces. And the word began to spread. Maybe what we had was really from the old king. It wasn't from his son after all. Some of them began to come to the rallies. There began to be music. There began to be thousands of people coming to the rallies. Maybe we need to bring the old king back. Maybe we were better off with him after all. And finally, the day of the election came, and they put the old king back. And they brought him in, and they carried him on their shoulders, and there was music, and there was dancing, and everything was right in the world again, because they realized the old king was better than what they had. That's the parable of what we have in the book of Revelation. As God comes down to the final showdown, God is going to have to let go to say, this is what the world would look like. There's an election going on. You choose who you want. You want him, then this is what that world will look like under him. Seals, trumpets, and plagues. And then under the power of the latter rain and the Holy Spirit, 144,000 and the three angels give the truth about God. And then people have to choose. I do not know where we are in this God letting go. I don't know how close we are to the final events. But we would have to agree, I think, is that this fits the picture of God beginning maybe to let go and say, let the world be like. Here these disasters come. So we have the four horsemen in Revelation chapter 6. Wish I could show you pictures of the four horsemen. There's some questions about these horsemen. Of course, are they from God or from Satan? There are those, and they're very good people, we respect them all, who believe that these are judgments from God. That God has been storing up his wrath for thousands of years, and now God finally is going to hurl down judgments. And you can believe that. Or you can say that this is evil, and God is letting go, and it's the nature of evil to do this. I lean that way because it says the angels are holding back. Hard to imagine that the angels are holding back God. I think the angels are holding back evil, and God takes them back. The second question is, are they literal or are they spiritual? The Adventist Church's history has been to interpret these as spiritual. That rather than literal disasters, these are spiritual over the last 2,000 years. So when there's a war, it's a spiritual war. It's a famine, it's a spiritual famine. And there's lots of good precedent if you want to believe that. But there's also a lot of support in the books supporting the idea that these are very literal. And that God at the end of the world, he's the one who created the world, and he glued the world together, and now as he begins to pull back, the world begins to go crazy physically. And mountains will be moving, and there will be disasters, and nature goes crazy. And if you parallel it to Matthew 24, many people have seen that Matthew 24 seems to parallel the seven seals. And there's wars and famine and pestilence and earthquakes, just like it. And it goes on till the dark day and the moon red and the stars falling. And we've always taken those as literal. So I lean a little more to the literal side, but maybe it's both, literal and spiritual. So now we come to the four horsemen themselves. First one comes roaring in, and it's the white horse. Here again, there's a little bit of a debate. Does the white horse represent Christ in the first century, as the early church comes out in purity, like the Revelation 19 and the white horse? Or is it conquest? Is the four horsemen all evil? And when there will be conquest in the last days. The second one, the red horse. It says it's given power to take peace from the earth. So this would be war. If you take it spiritually, this would be spiritual war. The great controversy going on. If you take it literally, this would be more and more wars going on. Wars and rumors of wars, like Matthew 24. I just happened to flip channels the other night, and here was Hacksaw Ridge, the one about Desmond Doss. And I had just forgotten how full of violence that movie was. They had a special showing for a group of us. They wanted some reaction. And just war is terrible. War is absolutely terrible. And Desmond Doss did a great thing, but just the sheer volume of horrible things. And here at the end of the world would be God letting go, and there's just more war and more terrible war. War was awful. The third horse is a black horse. It says, a black horse, a rider holding a pair of scales and a quart of wheat for a day's wages. This is famine. You're only making enough to feed yourself. You work today, you buy food and eat yourself. You can't pay for your family or rent or a car or anything else. That's all you get. You just survive. Famine. Spiritual famine or physical famine. And now we come to the pale horse. Revelation 6, verses 7 and 8. A pale horse, its rider named Death. He was given a power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and pestilence. Some versions say plague. In Luke chapter 21, it says there'll be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilence. Pestilence are epidemics, pandemics. Here we are. Is this particular pandemic the sign of the end? And here we are, and Christ is going to come in a few weeks from now. Maybe not. But clearly, it's the beginning of something. And we have to take it seriously, say we're in the timeline as we move into the last days. I take this literal. The 10 plagues in Egypt were literal. Matthew 24, the pestilence is literal, so I take this literal. And that we're in the middle of some of this, the fourth horseman. Now you could say we've had these things all along. But could it be that they're going to come faster and faster? So far we've solved them. I just read today Ebola is still going in Congo. And they're worried about trying to keep that from adding to our drama in the world. But maybe we can solve them after a while. We get smart people and SARS and MARS and one after the other. And maybe we'll solve this one. And the smart people will come up with a vaccine and we'll get the testing and we'll somehow put this to bed. But if you read this Bible, it sounds like we will just get hit faster and faster and more, and we will not be able to handle them all. We won't find enough money to solve all the earthquake damage and all the typhoons and disasters around the world. We used to go rafting when I was young pastor. I lived in Grants Pass, Southern Oregon, and we would go whitewater rafting, and we all got a little, we call torpedo boat. I was very good at that when I was young. And we would go on a 3-day, they call it a wild and scenic Rogue River. Maybe one guy would have a big boat with all the packs and equipment. We would all go in our little kayak. After we got it for the first 2 or 3 times, we did it many times, we were bored by the calm water. People were fishing and whatever else. Well, you got excited when the rapids came. And you would you would see the canyon walls begin to narrow. And then the water would begin to go faster. And after a while, you could begin to hear the roar of the rapids that were coming. And we would all get in the line. And then if you were in the front, all of a sudden, there would be a time when you couldn't see the river anymore. There was going to be a drop. And we would go as fast as we could go. And we would try to catch that first hole as big as we could and try to get all the way out of the water. That's what it's like. I've been to the Victoria Falls, a mile back from the river, at the calm like a lake. But as you get closer to the river, I walked up on the top, and all of a sudden it gets faster and louder and roaring, spray is bouncing, and then you go over the falls. And we're in that time, and the 4 horsemen are part of that time, as the world begins to gather momentum and the signs begin to come faster and faster. And we are not strong enough and clever enough to solve all of the problems. But we have here in the 7 seals some good news. The pestilence and the earthquakes and all this are the first 4 horsemen. Then there's the 5th one, the souls under the altar. And then the 6th seal is the dark day and all of that. And then we come to the 7th seal, which is Jesus coming. The 4th seal is not the end of the story. Someday there is going to be Jesus who comes. And there will be no more crying. And there'll be no more tears. And there'll be no more dying. No more suffering and no more COVID-19. 20-year-old girl died today in Riverside. She was one of the caregivers at the nursing home that had to clean out everybody from the nursing home a few days ago because only one person came who was able to work there. They're all sick. And the 20-year-old girl died last night in the paper today. A friend of mine's an ER doctor back in Chicago. His wife called me Friday. He's an emergency doctor. Great doctor, trained right here down the street. All 3 sons have gone to Loma Linda and are doctors now. And he was in the hospital himself. I called him, he could hardly talk. But this promises that someday we will have the 7th seal, that Jesus will come and take us away. This is not the end. Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. There will be an ending to all of this. Well, we've got to answer 2 or 3 questions before we're done. What about prayer? Isn't it clear, I guess, that we have to say prayer, have to pray for certain things that are appropriate, evidently? Prayer is not going to make the virus go away all by itself, or it would have been gone by now. We can all sort of intuit that there are some limits to how prayer will accomplish things. If I'm late as a pastor to a funeral and all of a sudden here comes a 100-car train, I could pray as hard as I can. God is not going to fly me over that train or take the train away. I'm going to wait and I'm going to be late. If I'm in Africa and we're backpacking and all of a sudden someone needs brain surgery, no matter how hard I pray, they're not going to let me do brain surgery on that person. We just know that. And so far, it doesn't look as you can just pray and make a virus go away and stop hurting the world. What can we pray for? It's pretty clear that we can pray for wisdom. We can pray for the medical people who are looking for cures, for vaccines, for testing. Pray for all our caregivers everywhere, right down the street here. Pray for them. One by one, we knock off the diseases because smart people who are guided by God get wisdom, I believe, and find a protocol, find a vaccine. Pray for our government that they will find ways to give wise decisions, help find equipment and test all the things that have to be done. Pray for our governments. And pray for each other that we will make good choices ourselves, that we'll protect each other, we'll follow these guidelines, and we will stay healthy because we followed wisdom and truth. Second question. I had a young preacher preach in front of me one time, very talented preacher. But he said the world is not getting worse and worse, the world is getting better and better. He said anybody that says the world is getting worse and worse, any church that says that is going to die. I said, what are you talking about? And he had 9 numbers that he found that some things were getting a little better in the world. So we went out to eat, and I said to him, my friend, yes, it's true, there are things. We stand on top of the shoulders of people in history. There are places where the world is getting better. I understand. We have computers. We have some things that we did not have before. But I said, are you really saying that the trajectory of the world is upward and that we're going to solve our water, we can make all the water clean and the air is going to be clean and we're going to solve all the diseases and we're going to solve the energy issues, we're going to make all the schools good and we're going to get rid of drugs and we're going to get rid of viruses and advance all the other problems and we will finally make heaven here? Is that really what you are saying? I said, well, I didn't exactly mean that. I said, be careful, my friend, because this is what we teach. We are Adventists, and we believe, even though we may find a solution to a few things, this world is not overall getting better and better. It's going to get worse and worse, and we need Jesus to come and take us away to another place. That will be heaven. This is not heaven, and it's not going to be heaven. God's going to come in the 7th seal and take us away. I had another young person say to me, don't you think we make too big a deal out of second coming and heaven? Who cares about streets of gold and mansions anyway, sitting on clouds playing harps? What we need to do is to make more second coming moments here, heavenly moments here, make the world better. I said, okay. I agree that we should make the world better. I agree. When I go overseas, I do the best I can trying to find a way to help poor people in our schools and clinics and hospitals. Yes, we could. Yes, we should. We should do the best we can to make this world better, provide heavenly moments. But I said, my friend, what about the people who are refugees in Syria? Whole towns and villages destroyed. What about the 3 million refugees who are camped out in Jordan where I was last month? What about them? What about the slums in India? What about that little boy you saw the pictures lying on the beach? What about the people dying every day right now in New York and everywhere? You don't want heaven? You don't care about a heaven? I'm 66 years old. I'll be 67 next month. I want Jesus to come. I want to heaven so that we can go on from here. And so I just say to you, my friends, yes, we may be moving towards the end. But Jesus promises another day coming, another place is coming. And I just want to jump down to the end of the book of Revelation where it says, and the Spirit and the bride say, come. Whoever is thirsty, let them come. And whoever wishes, let them take the free gift of the water of life. Hilda and I were watching Inside the Actors Studio, whose host just died a few days ago. Great, great show. We loved it. Every week they would interview another great celebrity of some kind. One night they interviewed Meryl Streep. And I'll never forget it. They had a little question they asked every time, and they said, if there is a God and there is a heaven, and you get to go, if you're walking up to heaven, what do you hope to hear from the voice of God? Just like that, Meryl Streep said, everybody's in. That's what we all want, to be able to come. I had a dream a few months ago, true story. And in that dream, I had retired, sure enough, which I have. But in the dream, we had moved down to Los Angeles, and we were on the 26th floor of a high-rise building downtown. We just wanted to try city life and retirement. And it's Christmas night, and our family are there, our sons are there, they have girlfriends are there, and we're all at midnight, when all of a sudden the building begins to shake. And we quickly get up. And Hill and the boys get up and say, Dad, we got to go. And they begin to head down the stairs. But I'm a little older, and I've got a cane, and I didn't move so quick. So I got out the door, thought maybe I should try the elevator. I tried the elevator. The elevator didn't work. So I began to head down the stairs with my cane, 26 floors. Maybe this is it. This is the big one we've been talking about in California all these years, the big earthquake. I got down to the bottom, and it's not there. It's not just that. The place is lit up, it's midnight, and it is bright, and there's a cloud, and there's angels, and it is Jesus coming. And I come out the door, and this is it, and Hilda and the boys are already on the cloud, and they're waving at me, say, come on, Dad, hurry, we're going, come on, Dad. But I don't seem to have an angel. You can't go if you don't have an angel. And I don't seem to have an angel, I can't go. Somehow, after all this, I'm not ready. I missed out, I'm off the list. And all of a sudden, an angel comes running around the corner, all out of breath. And I said, I went up to your house. I went up to get you. You weren't there. Let's go. And I get to hear the one word I've been waiting for all my life. The one word that matters more than anything else. And if you hear that word, nothing else matters. If you don't hear it, everything matters. The word come. The angel says, come, let's go.